And the motion, this House believes the West is right to be suspicious of Islam. And then I started thinking about a cartoon that I have here in this envelope. May I? Thank you very much. May I finish? Excuse me. So here we are.
Is it not enough?
However, I would encourage Mr. Fox to make a point and move on.
I was until point forward.
Should be suspicious of Islam.
But I show you this.
Everyone already knows what's inside that envelope, except they don't. And we'll get back to the envelope in a bit, because they just became part of the argument. Quick recap. On June 17, the Oxford Union held a debate on whether or not the West has a right to be suspicious of Islam. On the one hand, you had speakers arguing that concerns about Islam are legitimate, and on the other side, the speakers were arguing that those are confusing Muslims and Islam with extremism and radicalization. Tension was already high before the debate even got going. And then one of the speakers, Lawrence Fox, pulls out an envelope and threatens the entire room to show a character of Muhammad. And that's where we begin, because the image hasn't even been shown yet. But before we keep going, let's define our terms. First, Islam, the religion itself, one of the Abrahamic religions based on the Quran and attributed to the teachings of Muhammad. Next, Muslim, any person who follows Islam. And more importantly, Islam is just a set of religious beliefs. Muslim describes a person. Those are already two completely different entities. Now let's talk Islamism. Islamism is different. Islamism is the belief that Islamic principles should govern or influence political and social institutions. And last, jihad. Jihad is a form of militant Islamist ideology, and at its core, they legitimize violence and all means necessary to accomplish their political and religious goals. And definitions matter because when Muslims, Islam, Islamists, and jihad all gets conflated, people can weaponize Islamophobia to silence legitimate criticism, and this isn't to say that every Muslim is a terrorist. On the contrary, there's 2 billion Muslims, and the majority of them are non-violent. And if being Muslim isn't a good predictor of being a terrorist, how do we get from Muslim to jihad, and what does radicalization look like? When people think about radicalization, they often think about something like this. The more religious you get, the more extreme you get, and then eventually boom. But that's too simple and not accurate at all. When it comes to predicting how likely is an individual to become a terrorist, there isn't one factor alone. And religion is not a good enough indicator. In reality, it's more complicated. There's Moghaddam's staircase and Borum's model, and I will link them down below if you want to go into that rabbit hole, but this isn't what this is about. Religion can absolutely be a part of radicalization and ideology, but it's not a good enough indicator alone. Something's missing. And if religion alone doesn't predict radicalization, how come everyone in that room was terrified? They're not afraid of the envelope, and they're not afraid of the man holding it either. And instead of asking if the fear is prejudiced or justified, I want to ask something measurable. Where did that expectation come from? That fear didn't appear out of nowhere. When Salman Rushdie published the Satanic Verses, Ayatollah Khomeini back then issued a fatwa on his head that is valid till this day. It holds up until his death, and you still got attacked over it. Then came the Muhammad cartoons from Charlie Hebdo. In 2015, 8 gunmen attacked the Charlie Hebdo office over repeatedly publishing cartoons of Muhammad. And then in 2020, Samuel Paty was beheaded in France over showing those same characters to his students in a class over free speech. 3 completely separate and different incidents, but all teaching you the same lesson. There can be a cost to what's in that envelope.
I think it instills in me feelings much, much more worrying than suspicion.
So when Lawrence Fox reached for that envelope in Oxford,
So, let's get this out, shall we?
nobody needed to believe that every Muslim is violent. Nobody needed to believe that every Muslim is radical.
So here we are with this cartoon, right? And
They didn't even need to know what's inside that envelope. They already know what the envelope represents.
as an Englishman who believes in free speech,
Ultimately, the envelope did not contain the infamous Charlie Hebdo cartoon, but it didn't need to. That was the whole point. So now we know where the violence is coming from. But the part I'm interested in is, if the people committing the violence are a minority, how come everyone else is adapting their behavior? Nobody in that Oxford chamber needed to be violent or support violence for that envelope to work. They just needed to believe that somewhere, someone might. And once that belief changes your behavior, the threat itself has accomplished something without without anyone ever having to make one. Imagine I tell you there's this button, and you're absolutely free to press it if you want. There's no law against pressing it. Nobody will arrest you for pressing it, but there's a chance you might get killed. I don't know how likely it is to be you, I just know it happens. How free do you feel to press that button? Would you? So if nobody has to tell you to stop doing something anymore, who is enforcing the rule? But you know what? Maybe who is enforcing the rule is the wrong question here. Who is adapting to whom? So welcome to my favorite section and what I do best. Let's get out of the headlines and look at the data. Okay, so if we're going to talk about tolerance, integration, accommodation, I want to be precise. I don't want to guess what British Muslims are thinking. Let's ask. So I have surveys asking British Muslims how they feel about a wide range of political and social issues. And I will link it all down below if you want to look into it yourself. But we're going to be looking into two comparisons here. First, we're going to compare the sentiment between British Muslims to the general British population. And then we're going to compare British Muslims to US Muslims. So British Muslim against the general UK population is going to show us if there is a value gap. And then the second comparison, same religion, different country, different institutions, different political culture, but we're going to see if there is any difference. The participants were asked a wide range of questions, but I'm going to focus on 4 that I think tell the entire story. So first question they asked the participants, do you believe in democracy or do you think there is any other system that will be better to govern the UK?
Democracy basically means
11% of UK Muslims said different.
government
4% said, I don't know, but the concerning statistic here,
by the people,
23% of the general population
of the people,
don't seem to know what system they want the UK to be governed in,
for the people.
which is a little bit concerning, isn't it?
But the people are retarded.
And the US Muslims said 16% believe a different system other than democracy. And while yes, both in the UK and the US, over 80% of Muslims say that they support democracy, hold the applause. Next, they were asked, do you believe criticism of religion should be restricted by law? More than 84% said that they believe yes. The vast majority of British Muslims support the government regulating criticism of speech one way or another. Now, same question for US Muslims. 70% think criticism of religion should be legally restricted in the US. One of the more interesting statistics when they were asked, do you support LGBTQ rights? But hold on, 70% said yes, they support rights for LGBTQ people, but I don't think they thought this one through. And here's the kicker, and why I said hold the applause. When asked, do you believe that Islamic and Sharia law should become the basis of legal law in the UK? 45% of the respondents said yes. They either don't know what Sharia law means, or they were just lying in all the other answers. In the US, almost half of the respondents said Islamic law and Sharia law should become the legal system for the US. And again, how does that work with any of the other questions?
You keep using the word. I don't think it means what you think it means.
Which brings me back here. Does the West have a right to be suspicious of Islam? Islam is a religion. Muslims are people. Islamism is political and jihad is violent. And even something like Sharia can mean something very different to the people telling the pollsters they support it. And being Muslim doesn't really predict radicalization, but a tiny violent minority can still create an expectation so powerful to change the behavior of millions of people who will never even encounter an extremist in their entire lives. But the polling shows something even more inconvenient. Muslims are not a monolithic group. No group is one block, ever. But some of these answers appear to be contradictory of one another. So do I think the West should be suspicious of Muslims? No. But should the West be suspicious of Islam? Absolutely. The same way it has the right to be suspicious of Christian values, Jewish values, communist values, just like they have the right to criticize any ideology that asks to shape the society everyone else has to live in. Which brings me back to Oxford.
Stephen, there is a crowd outside rioting against you tonight, and without the protection and generosity of a Muslim Palestinian president, you would be quite literally cooked.
And she's right. He would. And that's the problem. Everyone in that room should be grateful that they have the right to speak freely. But I don't think we owe that gratitude to Aisha Khan as much as we owe it to liberal values. Thank you so much for watching. That was episode 1. Hit subscribe so that we can reach the first 1,000 subscribers and officially kickstart data-driven Middle East. We're just getting started. And thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate every one of you watching.
I am not here to express suspicions of individual Muslims at all. There are many Muslims, including within my own family, who I love deeply. And as a Christian, I'm commanded to love my neighbor and to pray for my enemy. It is my most strongly held belief on this planet that every single human life is sacred and all lives matter.